everybody. Today I would like to make hopefully a quick review of the book Rebel Witch by Kellyanne Maddox. This book was sent to me. You know who you are, thank you so much. I promised I would do a review of it, and quite a few of you seem to be interested in it. So here's my thoughts after reading this book. First of all, I have to say that it's super hard for me to review this book because pretty early on into the book itself, I realized that this is not exactly a book for me. And I knew that it would be hard for me to relate to the content of the book and consequently to make a review of it. I'm sure people who, this book is actually intended for would probably be better reviewers. So I just want to make this clear because this can impact this review and what I'm mentioning, what I'm not mentioning, and how I'm approaching the contents themselves. So who is this book for? I think that this book would be a great read for people who perhaps are magic curious but never practiced before, and they would like to kind of get this overview of what contemporary magic is and what people practice, how they practice, especially this kind of contemporary approach to it. Another group, and I feel like this is probably the target that Kellyanne had in mind when she was writing this book. At least that's my guess. I don't know it, of course, but it only makes sense to me. I think that people who are just starting out, and this would be one of their first books to read about witchcraft and contemporary witchcraft especially, right? Or people who are kind of practicing for a while but are still looking for their own path, their own approach to magic, and they haven't really found anything that would speak to them yet. This would be a great book for people like that. Another group would be people who are either bored with their practice or feel trapped in rigid traditions. So people who are looking for something fresh, something new, especially in comparison to various traditional forms or the more mainstream approach to witchcraft. And people who need a permission slip to be themselves and to, not feel like they have to follow rules. And I just want to quote a tiny bit that Kellyanne wrote at the last page of the book, which I feel like it would be perhaps useful if this was actually at the beginning, so that the reader can quickly understand the intention behind the book. So this is the last page with the title "Go Forth and Rebel." She says, I wanted this book to act as a fizzy little permission slip, nothing more, nothing less. I'm not the most academic of witches and certainly not the longest in the tooth. But considering all the rules there are to follow in this reality and all the duties there are to carry out, what I do have is a deep instinct that your witchhood should be as wild and rogue as you want it to be. So I feel like this is basically, telling you all you need to know about the intention behind this book, why it was written. So I feel like this book is really great at this, right? Because she mentions pretty much all the time that no matter what you choose to do, it should always be something that works well for you, and things that come from your own imagination and are your own ideas will always or oftentimes be better than something that you find in a book and you don't really feel great about, or it doesn't excite you as much. So this is definitely a book for people who have a hard time kind of letting go and being rebellious and doing their own thing and experimenting with witchcraft and finding their own path. As it says in the subtitle, right? This book is about carving the craft that's yours alone. That's true, that's definitely what this book is about. Now, I was a bit surprised perhaps reading this book, because this is not the kind of book I kind of expected from Kellyanne Maddox based on the content that she usually puts out there on YouTube especially, but I guess it makes sense as kind of this first introduction book. I mean, reading this book, I had this feeling at the back of my head that this book feels like an introduction, like a base kind of a thing that she's going to perhaps build upon in the future with maybe some courses or another book or multiple books. I don't know what her plans are, but this is kind of what this book felt like. And maybe now let's talk a bit about the structure of the book itself. So the book is divided into 3 parts. The first part is called Let's Begin, and this part is very much an introduction into what witchcraft is, who a witch is, who a rebel witch is, and some like basic things like challenges you might encounter or how to step out of the broom closet, and why practice witchcraft in the first place. So this part felt like it was written for people who never really practiced witchcraft, or people who are still kind of looking for their own way of defining what witchcraft is for them. I'm not sure, to be honest, but this part felt very introductory. Part 2, which is the main part of the book, it's around 150 pages. The entire book, by the way, is around 250 pages. So this is the main chunk of the book. It's Make It Happen. And in this part of the book, I feel like it was written, again, it was surprising for me. I did not expect it to be written this way. Kind of like a lexicon where there's pretty much everything you can think of is covered in this part, right? Like some basics of the witchy calendar, and she kind of talks about the 8 Sabbaths, which again I found surprising. She talks about various like entities, beings, cleansing, creating sacred space, all of the tools of the craft, what spellcraft is about, and some basic ideas on how you can start doing spell work. Same with rituals, then divination, which was very short, and then keeping records, which is basically all about books of shadows and that kind of stuff. So this part, it's around 150 pages. As I said, it's kind of like this lexicon style, so she doesn't really talk in depth about any of those practices mentioned. It's more like if you would like to Google what is, I don't know, banishing, and then you get like a paragraph or 2 about what banishing is. So this is basically what this main chunk of the book is about. It kind of explains what something is as a practice or as a tool, when it can be used or what it's used for in your craft, and then some basic kind of creative ideas of how you can approach something. And this, I think it's important to mention that those ideas for your craft are very much from a pop culture magic perspective. It's basically a branch of chaos magic, let's just leave it at that. So you have a lot of, working with, contemporary figures like icons, or doing internet magic, using emojis in your magic. And the name pop culture magic, I don't think it was mentioned in the book. I feel like it's important to at least, mention those labels for people who would like to know what they are just learning about, if they like it, right? So they can find more resources about this same kind of an approach to magic. So this is definitely, at least in my opinion, pop culture magic, right? That's part 2 basically, and then part 3, which is it's called Let's Keep Growing. And for me personally, as somebody who practices for fucking ages, this was the most kind of interesting part of the book, where you actually kind of get to know more of Kellyanne's opinions on things and approaching some things, like how she approaches shadow work, which I felt like was well written, how she approaches ethics and kind of what to pay attention to. What I really appreciate is that she mentions ethical dilemmas, for example, and that she doesn't agree with something personally, but she never imposes her own opinion onto you. It's always presented in a way that's very like free, in the sense that she's not trying to make you think the same way that she does think. You know, it's all about making sure that you remember that you are supposed to be the one who decides how to approach things. So she's not gonna tell you not to do curses, or she's not gonna tell you how to approach, you know, cultural appropriation, though she does state very clearly at the beginning of the book that she is very careful about this, and that's why she's not going to use any language that's culture specific, and she's not going to present or teach things that she's not expert in. And I really appreciate that. I can't stress it enough how important it is, in my opinion, for you know, authors to pay attention to this and to make it clear, because when somebody reads your book, and especially if it's new practitioners, right? Because this is the main target group of who is gonna read this book is new practitioners. They really need to hear about this, and they really need to know right off the bat, and not like 5 years later down the line, that there's ethics, that there's cultural appropriation, that there's important things to kind of consider, and the sooner the better, right? So I really appreciated that. And so, as I said, the third part of the book, sadly it was only like 45 pages, which I really wish this was the main part of the book, but of course I'm just being selfish here, right? Apart from some of those important topics like ethics or basic shadow work, she also guides you through troubleshooting your practice, so why things might not work, or, you know, when to kind of recognize that you should perhaps step back from something, you know, that kind of a thing. And I feel like that's very important, and it's probably one of the most helpful like chapters in the book. It's not talked about as much, and I feel like new practitioners especially, but to be honest, everybody, even people who've been practicing for fucking ages, everyone sometimes gets into this place where you kind of don't know why something's not working, you don't know how to step back, you don't know how to kind of diagnose your craft situation, to know how to proceed next, stuff like that. And this chapter does a really good job with this, so I appreciated that a lot. She also mentions just a tiny bit about community, so, you know, trying out a coven, but also finding people online to either discuss your craft with or practice online, like long distance witchcraft, that kind of a thing. So that wasn't that much in depth, but she also mentions that in her opinion, like, being a rebel witch is mostly a solitary path, and when you join groups you most often have to compromise something. So yeah, that's fair enough, of course. Another important thing is that she mentions, she does this mini chapter about when to seek external help with things. So it's especially talking about those moments where your craft is perhaps becoming unhealthy for you, and or like if you're not really the kind of a person who gets good results at doing shadow work solo, that kind of a thing, then she encourages you to seek external help, either through a therapist or talking to people who know more about the topic, or doing something with people, having somebody to you know, kind of help you verify things. So I think that's really helpful as well, and I especially appreciate that she mentions therapy. I think that's really cool. It kind of makes it clear that while witchcraft is an amazing tool, it's still not going to kind of solve all your problems, and it shouldn't really be the only tool that you use in your life for, you know, solving problems, probably. So yeah, I really appreciated that. So the part 3, Let's Keep Growing, in my opinion, it was the best part of the book and the most helpful of the entire book. But yeah, overall, would I recommend this book to new practitioners or to people who are looking to undergo some kind of a transformation in their craft? Sure, I think it's a great first book. I feel like Kellyanne kind of almost channeled this like witchy mom or witchy auntie kind of a thing where I kind of imagined her like talking to new practitioners in this book. It was, to me, it was kind of like this feel throughout the whole book. It was very cute in terms of like writing skills, I guess, or editorial skills and all of that. I don't know, I found maybe one typo in the entire book or something like that, so it's really well written in that regard, which I also do appreciate, because books these days sometimes have like minimal or non-existent editing, and it's hard to read because of that. This is not the case with this book. It's easy to read, the language is easy, the kind of overall approach is very friendly, as I said, especially for people who are new to the craft or are looking for new elements that they could add to their path or ways to identify with. So, as Kellyanne herself mentions, this book definitely is a permission slip for people who either are kind of, you know, scared of being rebellious or don't know if it's a good way to approach their craft. This book is definitely going to have that covered for you. If you are an experienced practitioner who is not necessarily into pop culture magic, then this book might not be for you, because it's, for one, very much introductory, and second of all, the main kind of creative approach in this book is based on pop culture magic. So if those two things aren't your thing, then obviously you are not the target reader for this book. You are not the target audience, and that's fine, I feel like. Of course, not every book is gonna be for everybody. So I just want to stress that I feel like this book wasn't written for me. I'm not the target audience. At times I was kind of struggling to get through the book, and Kellyanne also mentions regularly that if something does not kind of resonate with you, then just skip ahead in the book and like don't bother fucking reading that part, which I feel like is nice. And I kind of feel like I should have maybe listened and just skipped some of those parts, but I also wanted to give a fair review, and I felt like I can only do that if I actually read the whole thing and not just skip through half of it. So yeah, I read the whole thing, and this is my honest opinion. As I said, I would highly recommend it to new practitioners. To advanced people, not so much. And to sum everything up, I'm looking forward to kind of see where Kellyanne takes this next, because as I mentioned, I feel like this was kind of like a base book for something more in the future. So I'm curious if that's actually the case, and if she's planning to release something more in the future, perhaps more personal, because I feel like this was missing. The personal touch was missing a lot, in the sense that she really avoids talking about herself, about her experience, about her opinions. She stresses that it's all about you, basically, as the practitioner. So I kind of would wish for a more personal touch, but I understand that the character of the book itself prevented that from being part of this book. So yeah, I understand it, and I do appreciate it. So yeah, that's my honest thoughts. If you read the book, let me know what you thought, if you liked it, if you didn't like it. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.